Today, we're going to talk about some of the changes that came about on July 4th with the One Big Beautiful Bill, along with some of the tax changes specific to Washington State.
The One Big Beautiful Act, which is commonly known as the Big Beautiful Bill, or OBBBA for short, is an expansive reconciliation package that was passed on July 4th. It combines tax, spending, policy reforms, all of that. It was introduced back in May and passed the House May 22nd and was passed by the Senate on July 1st and then made into law on July 4th. This thing spans almost 900 pages, right? It's a statute that modifies hundreds of provisions that go across agriculture, health, energy, tax, defense, immigration, and infrastructure. So we're not going to spend all of our time on that.
You don't want to go through all 300 some odd pages?
Do that.
It'd be a really exciting commentary.
Yes, but what we thought is we would hit some of the highlights and specifically how they pertain to you in terms of taxation. So, does that sound all right?
I like it. Yeah.
Good, excellent.
Apolitical. There's no politics in this.
No,
let's just put that disclaimer out there. We are looking purely at this from an individual taxation standpoint and how it's going to affect our clients.
Absolutely. So let's see, one of the first things that really did happen that really does impact people is the Tax Cut and Jobs Act was made permanent. That had a 5-year extension. That's pretty tremendous because what that does is it continues a very high level of federal exemption for estate tax. So that piece has been made permanent now. The second thing that happened, which is not permanent yet, but the SALT deduction, that's the state and local tax, that deduction is now maxed at $40,000. That's a bump of
4 times.
$30,000. So what was $10,000 and is now $40,000. The interesting thing is this is a federal exemption for state and local taxation. So if you're itemizing,
because you used to be able to write that off prior to the tax
exactly. Yeah. So now you are actually able to jump up to that $40,000. That makes a very, very big difference in terms of what you're doing. So
well, and what we've seen with appreciating real estate prices,
oh my gosh,
and the levy rates increasing,
absolutely,
right, this is going to be a help because a lot of people now are bumping up on that $10,000. I know that sounds crazy, but bumping up on the $10,000 property tax bill.
Absolutely, and we see that
let
all
alone
in
your sales tax throughout the year.
Correct. So it is important though that this will phase out. As it's written, it phases out in 2029. So we've got a 5-year run on that, maybe similar to the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. We'll see what happens as it goes. The other thing, this is really pretty powerful as well, is for people, individuals, and families who are over 65, they now have a $6,000 on their standard deduction, right? So that bumped up significantly as well. So for married filing jointly, it was 2, now it's up to 6. That's a very powerful thing as well. And then the last thing that I want to hit is there's a $2,000 charitable deduction, even if you take the standard deduction, right? So if you're not going to itemize, you're just going to take the standard deduction. What you can do is you actually can then say, hey, I'm going to take some of my charitable inclinations, I'm going to do that, and now I've got an additional $2,000 that I can use in terms of deduction for your tax year. That one seems to be made permanent. I'm going to go back. The over 65 piece is temporary as well, that at this point would phase out after 2028. Okay. But again, we'll be watching it.
Just some great pieces though on there too. Yeah. When I love the fact that you can get a benefit for your charitable deductions when you couldn't get that in prior, unless you took, unless you itemized, right? So we have a higher standard deduction.
Correct.
We now have a higher standard deduction for a temporary period of time for those over age 65. And we have the ability to write off $2,000 of charitable deductions.
Yeah, and we've got a lot of charitably inclined clients, and so it's like that's very, very powerful.
So if you give out of a non-qualified account, meaning one that's not an IRA, right? If you give out of the IRA, you can do it through a QCD, qualified charitable distribution, right? Help satisfy that RMD. We've done lots of talks on that before. But you have this benefit as well for taking the elevated standard deduction. So and great things.
Not to go too far in the weeds too, but you can also you can start those charitable deductions at 70 as opposed to starting to have to take your RMD at 73. So
again, 75 now.
Or 75 by the time we get there. So
next one we wanted to talk about, there was 2 particular changes in Washington State that are going to affect clients both from a state tax standpoint and from a capital gain standpoint. Let's tackle the estate tax one. Washington State estate tax. There's federal estate tax, there's Washington State estate tax, 2 separate things. One of them's portable, meaning the exemption amount goes with you. One of them's non-portable, meaning you need to have this language in your will, or else it's not gonna, you won't be able to use that exemption amount. But that exemption jumped from $2.193 million to $3 million as of July 1st, 2025. But the kicker here is that they almost doubled the tax rates for anything above the $3 million mark. So it went from, now it's a 10 to 35%. So max rate is 35%. Used to be 20%, now it's 35%, right? So that's a big thing. If you're not utilizing that, this is one of the first things we talk with you when we sit down and go through financial planning on the estate planning side. If you are not using that $3 million exemption in some way, it is a use it or lose it exemption. So you need to make sure that you are connecting to your estate planning attorney, right? And that you have that language and you're utilizing that exemption in some way. It's very important that that gets done.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add to that?
I mean, just the fact that you do want to be contacting and talking with your estate planning attorney on these things, for sure. Yeah.
In all of this.
The
OBBB. Consult with your CPA. It's always good, right? They're the professionals in this. We just really want to be here to point out some key changes that might apply to you. The next big one that we'll end with is Washington State capital gains tax. I think they're calling it an excise tax.
Yes.
This first iteration was enacted into law a couple years ago with a 7% capital gains tax, right? There's a $280,000, 2025, right? $280,000 standard deduction, meaning anything below $280,000 on your standard deduction for Washington State does not get taxed. $280,000 to $1 million is assessed at a 7% capital gains tax. Anything above $1 million in capital gains on an annual basis is assessed an additional 2.9. So you're at 9.99% for your Washington State capital gains tax. There are exemptions to this. Real estate is exempt. Some businesses are exempt from sale. Stocks, bonds, and non-retirement accounts are not exempt. So if you have embedded gains, we got to be cognizant about how we go about selling these off so that we don't trigger an additional Washington State capital gains tax. So.
And that's one of the things that we do is we really try to set up what is your tax budget, right, over the course of X amount of years, so that we don't really bump up into those upper thresholds if we don't need to.
Because there's the federal capital gains tax, 0%, 15%, 20%, with a 3.8% kicker of AGIs or net investment income above 250. Yeah. So you could be at 23.8 plus 9.99 in Washington. So we want to be cognizant of those tax rates when we're going about considering selling off things with embedded gains. But.
Absolutely. So a couple of things there. Again, we're just trying to review these as they're pertinent to you and your tax situation. It's really, really important for us to note we're not giving tax advice. We are detailing out what is going on. That being said, obviously we said, hey, we want to make sure that you're consulting with your estate attorney. We want to make sure that you're consulting with your CPA. But more than that, the way that we look at ourselves is, we're the CEO of your board of professionals. And so we want to make sure that what we've got in terms of a plan is moving everyone forward in the same direction. So it's important for us to talk to you about these things. It's important for us to be aware of these things, and then to bring in professionals from a variety of different angles and make sure that your entire plan is working together.
Absolutely. Communication is key, you're saying?
Yeah.
Wow.
Weird.
Geez. In relationships? All types of relationships. People ask me sometimes, do you get into marital advice? No, but communication, it's important. So, hope you guys have a phenomenal weekend. Thank you for listening and hopefully laughing a little bit with us through what can be a super exciting topic, taxes.